The sin of idolatry, to a modern audience, is perhaps the least concerning and most pettily scrutinized and upheld of all the sins that there are. So what if one worships an idol? The modern and desacralized person may ask. It's not like the suffering that worshipping an object as if it were divine is remotely comparable to the destruction caused by wrath, lies, and cheating. Why is it that in Exodus 32, God commands Moses to slay thousands of his tribe for creating a molten idol of a calf? Why would Thomas Aquinas consider idolatry to be the worst of all the sins? Well, let us first make sense of idolatry. Idolatry is the offering of worship and reverence to a non-sacred object as if it was sacred. Kolakowski points out that in a truly godless world, idolatry is a meaningless concept, since idolatry presupposes the fact that there is indeed something sacred and worthy of our utmost divine worship. The concept of idolatry is not just about conforming to the authority of the moral law either, but also the state of belief or unbelief held in an individual. Any internal unbelief then, according to Aquinas, robs God of his undue glory. In Exodus 32, when God's wrath waxes hot against the Israelites, he states multiple times that he is a jealous God with demands for a monopoly on their worship. But before we pursue the concept of idolatry further, I'd like to re-examine the idea of the jealous God to those that don't view God through the lens of sacrality, but appreciate the psychological importance of myth. To them, I would say this: we all have hopes, aims, and ideals, and truly directing our focus to achieving them has always been our best method of making them a reality. Each time you eat junk food instead of going to the gym, or you let your anger cloud your judgment, you commit an action comparable to idolatry. The true desire you wish to serve and bring about is jealous, seemingly, to your conflicting goals, and will move away from you and become cold towards you the more you cheat and adult with other aims, sometimes as if the aim itself was a jealous lover. It is not so hard to see then that sacrificing the ultimate sacred object, the most good and most noble desire, on the altar of our own selfish interests will be met by strict punishment. Thinkers such as Aquinas and St. Paul count idolatry as the origin of all sin, whether it be lust, greed, wrath, or covetousness. Common across all these sins is an original act of sacrifice, the sacrifice of the most good ideal for our lowly, selfish, and fleeting desires. We are aiming creatures by nature, and the nature of all our actions depends on what we are aiming at. The term sin originally derives from a Greek archery term meaning to miss the mark or to aim awry. In all sin we have ceased to aim at what is good. Not only this, but we have chosen to value evil, sickness, and weakness over eternal goodness and love. How could there be anything more contemptible that we are capable of? Although it may still be hard for the modern person to see why worshipping a relic is such an awful crime, we need to realize that the act of idolatry is just the beginning of a long chain of events, causing people to serve themselves and not what is truly good. In hindsight, it is easy to see that had the Israelites been left to govern themselves without faithful servants such as Moses and Joshua, they would likely have been destroyed by God or otherwise. Although many believe that God has been killed, this does not stop idolatry taking hold of godless people in the modern age, whether it be the worship of celebrities or athletes, or values such as pity, lust, and power. It seems as though the religious impulse and the tendency to create idols will not disappear alongside the supposed death of God. Take the religious reverence for the Führer, Adolf Hitler, in Nazi Germany for an example. Perhaps the most universally understandable instance of idolatry is recognized today by parents. Even to the godless parent, the child's well-being is as close to a sacred thing as anything else. Perhaps the most awful instance of idolatry that afflicts all parents is letting their malice towards their children guide them before their love, which happens on occasion to everyone. The truly good aim, the aim that should be held sacred, the love and well-being for the child, often is corrupted and sacrificed for selfish and personal motivations. And maybe the instances are small or maybe they're large, but I'm sure those cases where such actions happen are the ones that terrorize the conscience of parents more than anything else that they've done towards their child. However, now that I've told you this, I'm going to tell you some reasons to doubt that all sin is idolatry. These arguments convinced me for a long time that idolatry was the root of all sin, until recently when I have become a little more doubtful. So the first thing that made me doubt this was the seemingly opposite concept of sacrilege. While idolatry is offering worship to non-sacred objects, sacrilege is the act of foregoing due reverence to something sacred. While it could be said that some sacrilege comes from selfishness, which could be seen as an idol of the self over God, it is also true that it sometimes is perpetrated accidentally, whether it be through unwitting ignorance, or whether it's an act caused by simply tripping and falling onto a sacred object, like we see in the Bible. Second is the fact that all sin being idolatry presupposes that all being is encompassed by an aim. Yes, we are aiming creatures, but what are we doing when we take aim? We can't merely be aiming in accordance to our other aims, as otherwise this would defeat the point of its sin itself. This would mean that changing our most fundamental aim from an idol towards God wouldn't be an act that was ever taken freely by ourselves. Instead, the nature of our aim must change depending on something else, some other factor. Perhaps the best candidate for this is our levels of lust. Here is what I have to say. I would say this: all sin is not idolatry, but rather all sins and idols are born from lust. It cannot be the case that we choose our idols and then we lust, for what would cast a shadow of idolatry into the world were it not lust for what is not God's? All that have remained true of heart have recognized their lust for the most bitter of venoms. It is here where man walks a tightrope over a raging abyss. All above him excavates firm ground. The one who asks if lust can be channeled towards what is good is in folly of thinking that they control their lust. What are your thoughts on the nature of sin and idolatry? Are all sins caused by idolatry? Or is perhaps there something else at play? What do you think is really the root of all the actions that make us stray away from what we know to be good? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll have another video for you guys up soon. Thank you very much. Have a great day.